What happens when a beloved daytime host goes head-to-head with a royal guest who refuses to play by the rules? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Kelly Clarkson for what was supposed to be a lighthearted conversation about his new projects, only to have the entire interview spiral into an explosive confrontation that left studio audiences gasping and producers scrambling. The tension that erupted on last night's episode of The Kelly Clarkson Show has everyone talking, and the footage is absolutely jaw-dropping. Before we get into this incredible story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below, because you're not going to believe what unfolds when these two powerhouses clash in the most dramatic daytime television moment of the year. The atmosphere in Studio 6B was electric, as Kelly Clarkson prepared for what her production team had marketed as an intimate conversation with Prince Harry about his latest charitable endeavors and upcoming memoir updates. The Duke of Sussex had been making rounds on various talk shows, but something felt different the moment he walked onto Kelly's set. His usual charming demeanor seemed forced, his smile more practiced than genuine, and there was an underlying tension that even the most casual observer could sense. Kelly, known for her warm and welcoming interviewing style, opened the show with her signature enthusiasm, but those familiar with her could detect a subtle shift in her energy. Sources close to the production revealed that there had been several last-minute demands from Harry's team regarding topics that were off-limits, including any mention of his relationship with his father, King Charles, his brother, Prince William, or specific details about his ongoing legal battles with the British press. "Welcome back to the show, Prince Harry," Kelly began, her voice carrying its usual warmth but with an edge that suggested she wasn't about to be pushed around. "I have to say, it's always interesting when we have guests who come with very specific guidelines about what we can and can't discuss." Harry's response was immediate and telling. His posture stiffened, and that practiced smile faltered for just a moment. "Well, Kelly, I think it's perfectly reasonable to want to focus on the positive work we're doing, rather than rehashing old grievances that the media seems obsessed with." The audience, initially excited to see the prince, began to sense the undercurrent of tension. Kelly, never one to back down from a challenge, leaned forward slightly, her journalist instincts clearly kicking in. "But isn't it interesting how you can write entire books about these so-called grievances and profit from them, but then suddenly they're off-limits when you're not in complete control of the narrative?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Harry's media training kicked in as he attempted to deflect with a practiced laugh, but his eyes betrayed his irritation. "I think there's a difference between sharing one's truth in a thoughtful, considered way and being subjected to gotcha journalism on daytime television." Kelly's eyebrows shot up at the barely veiled insult. The audience could feel the temperature in the room shift as she processed his words. Her reputation as America's sweetheart was built on genuine warmth and authenticity, not the calculated media manipulation that had become Harry's trademark since leaving the royal family. "Gotcha journalism?" Kelly repeated, her voice taking on a tone that regular viewers would recognize as a warning sign. "I'm sorry, but asking about publicly documented events and statements you've made isn't gotcha journalism. It's called having a conversation." Harry shifted uncomfortably in his chair, clearly not expecting this level of pushback from someone he likely assumed would be another friendly platform for his carefully curated image. "Look, Kelly, I came here to talk about the important work we're doing with mental health awareness and veteran support, not to be grilled about family dynamics that have been sensationalized by the press." The irony wasn't lost on anyone in the studio. Here was a man who had built his post-royal career on sharing intimate details about his family relationships, suddenly claiming privacy when faced with questions he hadn't pre-approved. Kelly's professional composure was beginning to crack, and those who knew her well could see the signs of her legendary temper starting to surface. "That's really rich coming from someone who's made millions sharing those exact family dynamics," Kelly shot back, her voice rising slightly. "You can't have it both ways, Harry. You can't profit from your story when it suits you and then claim privacy when someone asks legitimate follow-up questions." The prince's face flushed with anger, his carefully maintained public persona beginning to slip. I think you're being incredibly unfair and, frankly, disrespectful. I've shared my story to help others who might be struggling with similar issues, not to provide entertainment for daytime television." Kelly's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Help others? Or help your bank account? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've found a very lucrative way to monetize your family trauma while simultaneously playing the victim when anyone dares to question your version of events." The studio fell silent, except for the low hum of cameras still rolling. Harry's handlers, positioned just off camera, were frantically trying to signal to their client to regain control of the situation, but the damage was already being done. The mask was slipping, and the real Prince Harry was beginning to show through the carefully constructed public image. "I don't have to sit here and be insulted," Harry said, his voice tight, with barely controlled rage. "I came here in good faith to discuss important issues, not to be attacked by someone who clearly has their own agenda." Kelly's eyes flashed with genuine anger now. "My agenda? My agenda is to have honest conversations with my guests, not to provide a platform for self-serving propaganda. If you can't handle basic questions about your very public statements and actions, then maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews at all." The tension in the studio was palpable as these two strong personalities faced off, neither willing to back down. What had started as a simple interview was rapidly deteriorating into something much more volatile, and everyone present knew they were witnessing television history in the making. But this was just the beginning, and what happened next would shock even the most seasoned television professionals. The commercial break that followed was anything but a cooling-off period. While viewers at home saw advertisements for household products, the studio became a battlefield of whispered arguments and frantic damage control. Harry's security team huddled with his publicist, their faces grave as they realized their client was spiraling out of control. Meanwhile, Kelly's producers were torn between their loyalty to their host and the potential fallout from what was quickly becoming a public relations nightmare. When the cameras rolled again, the atmosphere had somehow become even more charged. Kelly, now fully committed to holding Harry accountable, wasn't about to let him off the hook. Her years of experience in the industry had taught her to recognize manipulation when she saw it, and she was done playing along with his carefully orchestrated victim narrative. "We're back with Prince Harry," Kelly announced, her voice steady but her eyes blazing with determination. "And before the break, we were discussing the interesting contradiction between demanding privacy while simultaneously writing tell-all books and giving exclusive interviews about your family." Harry's jaw visibly tightened as he realized Kelly wasn't going to pretend their heated exchange hadn't happened. His team had clearly advised him to try to reset the tone, but his wounded pride was making it impossible to back down gracefully. "Kelly, I think you're deliberately mischaracterizing my motivations," Harry said, his voice carrying the entitled tone that had become his trademark whenever challenged. "Everything I've shared has been in service of important causes and helping people understand the impact of media harassment and institutional racism." Kelly's response was swift and devastating. "Oh, please, you've turned your family grievances into a cottage industry. Netflix deals, book advances, speaking fees, all while claiming you just want to help people. If you really wanted to help, you'd be doing it quietly, not holding press conferences about it." The audience gasped at Kelly's directness. This wasn't the gentle, supportive host they were used to seeing. This was a woman who had clearly reached her breaking point with celebrity self-importance and wasn't afraid to call it out. Harry's composure finally cracked completely. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he snapped, his voice rising to a level that made several audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "You sit here in your comfortable studio, making millions from your talk show, and you have the audacity to lecture me about profiting from my experiences?" Kelly's laugh was cold and sharp. "The difference is, I don't pretend my show is a public service. I don't wrap my career in the flag of helping others while simultaneously trashing my family for profit. At least I'm honest about what I do." The prince's face was now flushed with rage, his carefully maintained public image completely abandoned. "Honest? You want to talk about honesty? How about we discuss how you've built your entire career on playing the relatable girl next door while you live in a mansion and make more money than most people see in a lifetime. The personal attack struck a nerve, and Kelly's eyes flashed with genuine hurt before hardening into steel. You know what, Harry? You're absolutely right. I do make a lot of money, and I do live well, but I've never once claimed to be a victim while simultaneously profiting from that supposed victimhood. I've never written books trashing my family or given interviews painting myself as a martyr while cashing checks for millions. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound that echoed through the suddenly silent studio. I don't have to sit here and be insulted by someone who clearly doesn't understand the complexities of my situation. Kelly remained seated, her voice deadly calm. Sit down, Harry. You're the one who came on my show. You're the one who's been touring the media circuit selling your sob story. If you can't handle being questioned about it, maybe you should have stayed in your California mansion instead of seeking out more publicity. The prince's security team was now visibly tense, unsure whether to intervene or let the situation play out. Harry himself seemed caught between his desire to storm off and his need to maintain some semblance of dignity. His media training was warring with his obvious fury, creating a volatile mixture that everyone in the studio could feel. You know what your problem is, Kelly, Harry said, his voice dripping with condescension. You're threatened by people who have actually stood up for what they believe in. You're comfortable in your little bubble of celebrity worship and softball interviews. You can't handle having a real conversation with someone who's actually trying to make a difference. Kelly's response was immediate and devastating. Make a difference? You've done nothing but make things worse for your family while enriching yourself in the process. You want to talk about making a difference? How about we discuss how your constant public attacks on your family have affected your father's health? How about we talk about how your interviews have impacted your relationship with your brother's children? The studio fell into complete silence as Kelly crossed a line that everyone knew would have consequences. Harry's face went white, then red, as the full implications of her words sank in. His hands were visibly shaking as he pointed an accusatory finger at her. How dare you, he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. How dare you bring my family into this? You know nothing about my relationship with my family, or the pain they've caused me. Kelly leaned forward, her voice equally intense. I know what you've told the world about them. I know you've made millions sharing their private conversations and painting them as villains. If you didn't want your family relationships discussed, you shouldn't have made them public commodity. The confrontation had reached a point of no return, and everyone in the studio knew it. But what happened next would exceed even the most dramatic expectations. Harry's entire body was trembling with rage as he stood over Kelly, who remained defiantly seated, her chin raised in challenge. The prince's carefully crafted public image had completely disintegrated, revealing the entitled, petulant man beneath the polished exterior. His voice, when he finally spoke, was barely controlled fury. You want to play this game, Kelly? Fine. Let's talk about family. Let's talk about how you've built your entire brand on being America's sweetheart, while your own personal life has been a series of public disasters. Divorces, custody battles, weight struggles, all played out for public consumption. At least I'm honest about my pain, instead of pretending everything is perfect while falling apart behind closed doors. The audience gasped at the vicious personal attack. Kelly's face went pale, but her resolve only seemed to strengthen. She stood up slowly, her voice deadly quiet when she responded. You want to go there? Really? Let's talk about honesty, Harry. Let's talk about how you've spent years claiming you wanted privacy, while simultaneously courting every media outlet that would pay you. Let's talk about how you've weaponized your mental health struggles to shield yourself from any criticism while attacking everyone who's ever cared about you. Harry's laugh was bitter and harsh. Weaponized? I shared my struggles to help others, something you clearly wouldn't understand from your privileged position of never having to face real adversity. Kelly's eyes blazed with indignation. Never faced real adversity? I grew up poor, Harry. I worked multiple jobs to support my family. I've been through divorce, custody battles, and public scrutiny that would break most people. The difference is, I didn't turn my pain into a profit center while destroying my relationships in the process. The prince's security team was now openly concerned, whispering urgently among themselves about whether to intervene. Harry himself seemed beyond rational thought, his royal composure completely abandoned. "You think you know me?" Harry snarled, stepping closer to Kelly's desk. "You think you understand what it's like to have your entire life dissected by the media? To have your mother's death turned into entertainment? To watch your family prioritize an institution over your well-being?" Kelly didn't back down an inch. "I think I understand a man who's so consumed with his own victimhood that he can't see how his actions have hurt the people who love him. I think I understand someone who's confused publicity with purpose and profit with progress." The studio cameras captured every moment of the explosive confrontation, the tension so thick it was almost suffocating. Harry's hands were clenched into fists, his breathing rapid and shallow. For a moment, it seemed like he might actually lose complete control. "You know what, Kelly?" Harry said, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're everything that's wrong with American celebrity culture. You're fake, you're shallow, and you're desperate for relevance. This whole interview is just another attempt to boost your ratings by attacking someone who's actually trying to make a difference in the world." Kelly's response was swift and devastating. "Make a difference? You've made yourself into a professional victim while alienating everyone who's ever loved you. You've turned your family's private pain into public entertainment while claiming moral superiority. You're not making a difference, Harry. You're making a living off your trauma while creating more of it for everyone around you." The words hit Harry like physical blows, his face contorted with rage and something that looked almost like recognition. For a split second, the camera caught a glimpse of genuine pain in his eyes before it was replaced by cold fury. "I'm done with this," Harry announced, his voice carrying the imperious tone of someone who had clearly never been held truly accountable for his actions. "I'm done with your pathetic attempts to humiliate me for your audience's entertainment." Kelly stood her ground, her voice steady despite the intensity of the moment. "The only person humiliating you here is yourself, Harry. I'm just asking the questions that your paid interviews and friendly media appearances have been too afraid to ask." Harry turned toward his security team, his movements sharp and aggressive. "We're leaving now." He spun back to face Kelly one final time, his finger pointing accusingly at her. "You think you've won something here? You think this makes you look good? You've just shown everyone exactly who you really are. A bitter, jealous woman who can't stand to see someone else succeed." Kelly's laugh was cold and final. "Success? Is that what you call it? Destroying your family relationships, alienating your friends, and turning your personal pain into a business model? If that's success, Harry, then I'm happy to be a failure." The prince's face was apoplectic with rage. Without another word, he ripped off his lapel microphone and threw it on the floor, the small device skittering across the studio floor with a sharp crack. His security team immediately moved to flank him as he stormed toward the exit, his expensive shoes clicking aggressively against the polished floor. "This interview is over," Harry shouted over his shoulder, his voice echoing through the stunned studio. "And you can be sure my legal team will be reviewing every second of this footage." Kelly remained standing behind her desk, her composure intact despite the chaos around her. "Good luck with that, Harry. Truth is an absolute defense, and everything I've said here today is verifiable fact." As Harry reached the studio exit, he paused for one final moment, turning back to deliver what he clearly intended to be a devastating parting shot. "You know what, Kelly? You're going to regret this. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Kelly's smile was sharp and triumphant. "Actually, I think I know exactly who I'm dealing with. And I think America does too now." With that, Prince Harry stormed out of the studio, his entourage scrambling to keep up with his furious pace. The heavy studio doors slammed shut behind him with a resounding bang that seemed to punctuate the end of one of the most explosive confrontations in daytime television history. The studio audience sat in stunned silence for several long moments before spontaneous applause began to build. Kelly, still standing behind her desk, took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm and professional, though her eyes still blazed with the intensity of the confrontation. Well, folks, that was certainly unexpected, she said, her trademark warmth returning to her voice. I guess some people just can't handle being asked to explain their own public statements and actions. The audience's applause grew louder, clearly supporting their beloved host who had just taken down one of the most entitled public figures of the modern era. Kelly's producers were frantically signaling from the wings, but she maintained her composure, addressing the camera directly. We'll be right back after this commercial break, and when we return, we'll have a much more pleasant conversation with our next guest about their new cookbook. As the cameras cut away and the studio lights dimmed, Kelly finally allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. She had stood up to royal entitlement and media manipulation, and she had done it with the full support of her audience. The confrontation that had started as a simple interview had ended with one of the most dramatic exits in television history, and Kelly Clarkson had emerged victorious, her reputation for authenticity and integrity intact, while Prince Harry's carefully constructed public image lay in ruins on the studio floor beside his discarded microphone.